today I'll be launching the very first Bookie series on my YouTube channel Bookie. Now before we get started, I'll just let you know what a Bookie series is, right? Uh, so if you guys have seen the last video, you might know, and if you have not, I'll just let you know. So on this channel, what I'll basically do is I'll create one playlist and I'll start uploading videos in that playlist according to one book, where I'll be explaining one chapter at a time. That is, I'll assign one episode to one chapter, right? That is what I'm going to do. And now let's get started, right? So the first book that I'll be launching here today, it's one of my personal favorites. It's one of those books. It's just a classic. But what's more is that this is something that can be important to everyone. This knowledge, everyone can benefit with. Students, teenagers my age, adults who are working full-time jobs, even people who have retired, right? This book is one that will actually help everyone practically, right? Practically, it's not just theoretical, it's practical, and that is what is the beauty of this book. What's more is that it helps to it actually gives us practical rules and steps on the process of wealth creation. What the fact that has intrigued me from the start is that I've seen so many people make a good fortune at their earning, at their living, at their livelihood. They have several sources of income. Some people have several sources, while some are just employed, but yet they have good incomes, and they're not making the most of their incomes. Because when I see them and they have, let's just talk about a person who's earning a salary, right? A person who's an employee. That person gets their income, gets their salary at the start of the month, let's say 1, and by the month end, that is 30 or 31st, the bank account again is empty, right? This is not what you'd call having wealth. This is just having an income where all of your money, or all of your income, is just put into expenditures. So a lot of us do not know how to manage our income, and this is where this book is very helpful. Now let me introduce the book to you. A lot of you might know this book, The Richest Man in Babylon. It's one of my favorites, by Richest, great guy. So yeah, let's get started. Now before we start, there's this disclaimer I have for you guys. So just watch it. Now that you guys have seen the disclaimer, let us move forward, right? Let us move forward. And now I'll let you know how the page of contents is, and you'll be able to see it on your screen now. So the first chapter that we have, the first chapter that we have here is The Man Who Desired Gold. Then the second one is The Richest Man in Babylon. The third one, 7 Cures for a Lean Push. Then the fourth one, Meet the Goddess of Good Luck. The fifth one, The 5 Laws of Gold. Sixth one, The Gold Lender of Babylon. Seventh one, The Walls of Babylon. Eighth one, The Camel Trader of Babylon. Ninth one, The Clay Tablets from Babylon. And I know there's a lot of Babylon here, but that's what the book is about, right? So 10th one, The Luckiest Man in Babylon. 11th one, and a historical sketch of Babylon, right? So this is the page of contents. I hope it's visible right here. Now that you guys have seen it, as I mentioned earlier, I'll be making one video per chapter explaining it to you guys. So today we'll be starting with the first chapter, and this video is about the first chapter, that is The Man Who Desired Gold, right? So let's just start with the chapter. Now when I'm going to start the first chapter, obviously I'll have to, embed this seed of what Babylon actually is in your mind, so it can flourish with the kind of knowledge that I am going to provide here, or the kind of information that I'm going to give you, right? So yes, now let me explain to you how Babylon actually was at that time, right? Now, what's your favorite metropolitan city? A lot of you might tell me this, that I love New York. I like London. Uh, there are loads of beautiful cities in the world. Los Angeles. These are what I can think of. Maybe Dubai. All of these cities that you're thinking of right now. You know, these are the financial centers, the trade centers of the world, right? They are. Now, Babylon was that kind of a city ages have passed, right? Ages ago. Um, it was what you'd call the financial and the trade center of the ancient world. Hmm? This is where I've painted a picture of the kind of conditions there were, right? But I haven't actually painted the picture of the physical world there, right? How did it exist? So, just to see it in existence, we have to visualize it. And this is the part where I'll give details, right? Babylon was a fortified city, right? It was a fortified city. Um, and in the middle, in the center, was the king's palace. Near the king's palace were the hanging gardens. Now, a lot of you might have heard of the hanging gardens. I hope you have, and if you have not, you can check them out on Google, and you'll understand that they were actually a piece of history. They're they can. I'm not sure if they're. Are you in sight yet? But they were, right. They were a very important part of history, of the world history, ancient world history, and the temple of Bel that there was. Okay. Now that now that we've gone upon how the center was, around it was the city. Around it was the city, right? Now the city was very pre-planned, and it was well settled. But there was this stark contrast that you would see in the city. Stark contrast how? There were houses, right? But some were very primitive. Some were very primitive, while then others you'd see, mansions, huge rich mansions. So that was the kind of contrast that I'm talking about here. That is the kind of contrast that I'm talking about here. This is how the kind of city it was. When you look at the movement, right? Most of the movement either on either on either on feet, that is by people walking around the city, people on mules, that is mules. They were a source of transport. Then there were chariots were used by rich people, uh, the ones who had actual horses. And then there were sometimes bullock carts were also used, but most of the times most of the population survived on feet, right? They walking citizens. So yeah, that's what it was. And what's more is that a lot of travelers used to come from here and there, right? Because it was a capital. It was a financial capital, it was a trade capital. Not only travelers but merchants used to come from different cities from across the world to sell their wares and to sell their handicrafts and whatnot, right? Babylon was not only the richest city in the world, but it was also the trade center, which means that it had a huge market. It had a huge market, huge flourishing market. So yeah, that's what it was. Now let us start with the story, right? Or more importantly, the chapter, The Man Who Desired Gold. When you listen to this, obviously you get a little bit insight about what this chapter might be about, right? It's telling you that there's this person who actually desires gold, who desires money, just like we do, right? So let us see what happens in this chapter then. Right? Let us go on. Now, as I made you imagine, you know, everything, I want you to imagine this house. Not a very, mansion-like house. It's just a normal house. It has these four walls, not the inside, but out on the outside, acting as a boundary. And they're not huge walls; they're short walls, uh, acting as a boundary. Then inside the boundary lies the house. Next to the house, just right next to the house, is an is a is an open workshop. Right? I hope you're visualizing all of it now. The house is primitive. It's made up of mud baked bricks, right? Bricks. So I hope you're visualizing all of it. Now, now we see, right? We see. Now, what is there in the garage? Or what is there not in the garage but in the workshop? When we look in the workshop, we see an unfinished, an incomplete chariot. Now, when you see an incomplete or an unfinished chariot in someone's garage or workshop, what do you think the person might be doing? What do you think that person's occupation would be, or livelihood, or source of livelihood would be? So obviously, it has to be, the person has to be a chariot maker, right? And so that person he was sitting right there on the wall, and he was looking at the distant city, and he was seeing all these people moving in the streets, and the hustle and the bustle of the city, right? He was lost in that noise, and he was looking. Now, when I talk of Babylon, Babylon is actually supposed to be situated in present-day Iraq, right? So when we talk about Iraq, we talk about Middle East, and Middle East, we all know, has humidity, has high temperatures. So, and what's more is that Babylon was situated in the valley of the Euphrates River. So that is where they were. And as this guy is sitting, a bead of sweat, because the sun is beating down on him mercilessly. Come on, it's very hot there. It's unpleasantly hot, and the sun is beating down on him mercilessly, and a bead of a bead of what? Sweat forms on his eyebrow, and from there it trickles down into the hairy chest of his chunk. Or no, sorry, in the hairy jungle of his chest, right? He's got hair on his chest. What's more is that when you look at the man physically, right, he's a middle-aged man. He hasn't got a lot of hair. He's got less hair. He's a middle-aged man. But when you look at his body, right, his exterior, you can see that he's an ox of a man. When I say ox of a man, obviously he's a hard worker because he's a chariot maker, right? He has to make things. He has to build stuff. So obviously he has to be strong. But what's more is that when you look at him, he's strong and he has a fat body, right? He has a fat body. All of this you're able to see now. I hope you're able to visualize it. So he's just sitting there and he's looking. And all of a sudden, there's this ringing in his ear. And when he pays more attention, he hears some familiar music. And when he recognizes it, he gets to know that it is the music of a lyre. Something like lyre. It is something like this. Maybe I'll just display it on the screen if you don't know what a lyre is, guys. Look, right here, right? So you guys can see. Now, as he looks towards in the direction of the music, he sees his best friend approaching him. Best friend who? The guy's name is Kobbi, and he's a musician. He's a good musician. He's one of the best musicians in the city of Babylon. Now that I've spoken about, I've given you a picture. What does Kobbi say when he meets our guy Bansir? The chariot maker's name is Bansir, right? So what does he say to Bansir? What does Kobbi say to Bansir? Obviously, they're very good friends, right? They've been best friends from the start. So they meet like old brothers, you know. And Kobbi, who's also a very well-wisher, you know, of Bansir, says, "May God bless you." You know, greets him with, "May God bless you with liberty," so on and so forth, right? Something that a best friend would do. Things like these. Now, when he looks at Bansir, he can see that Bansir is sitting idly. Just like right now, we are assuming, right? This guy has to be rich. This guy might have a lot of money. That's why he's sitting idle, right? He's not working hard in the day hours, right? So does Kobbi assume. It's like, but I see, Kobbi says, but I see that God has already given you that fortune, right? I'd be very happy to rejoice in it. And what's more is like, I'd like to share it. Uh, Kobbi assumes that his best friend Bansir has become rich, has earned a lot of money, and so he says, I'd be very happy to rejoice with you, to be happy with you, to share in your happiness, and what's more is to further share a little bit of money too. Share a little bit of your wealth too. He says, I would be very grateful if you could lend me 2 shekels. Now, shekels is the term used for the monetary, the currency there, right? The monetary term of exchange there. So those are, so his best friend Kobbi asked, I'd be very grateful if you could lend me 2 shekels for dinner, and I will pay back to you after a fortnight that is 2 weeks time, after I've earned well at the Noblesman feast where I'll be playing music. That's what Kobbi says. Now that we know what Kobbi says, Bansir very disappointedly says, even if I had 2 shekels, I could not lend it to you, my friend. And why? Because it would be my entire fortune. And no one in the entire world lends their entire fortune, their entire wealth, or whatever you'd call it, to even the best of his or her friends, right? You wouldn't. No one does, right? These days also, no one does. No one would. So yeah. Now Kobbi is perplexed and is surprised. It's like, then how come you're sitting like this? Right? How come you're sitting like this? Why are you sitting like this, like a dull, glum statue and not working, right? Our friend Kobbi now is being addressed by Bansir, where Bansir starts speaking and says that it must be a torment from gods, and that it started with a senseless dream. Because Kobbi previously asked, have gods been giving you trouble, right? So Bansir says, a torment it must be from the gods, and it started with a very senseless dream. Now let's see what the senseless dream was. Bansir says, in that dream I was a man of means. Now when I say a man of means, what does he mean? He means that he was rich and he was wealthy. He was rich and he was wealthy. He further adds on, I could buy whatever I wanted to. I could spend freely. I wouldn't have to worry about spending all of my money because I'd be so wealthy. I wouldn't. I could spare some change, to the beggars and give back to the society in a way. Then I could buy jewelry for my beautiful wife who deserves it all. Or or I could furnish my home with the most extravagant, and splendid rugs and ceramics. Right? That's what any man would. And what's more is that my wife was back, the same old maiden of the early married days. Right? She didn't have wrinkles. She was the same happy, young maiden back the old days. All of this, Kobbi says, seems so beautiful. Then why is it that what is it or what is it that has made you so sad? Bansir replies, when I saw all this and I woke up, I realized I didn't have it. And that's what made me sad. Right? Anyone would. When you dream like this, when you have such a beautiful dream, then when you come back to real life saying, oh, I wish I had that, right? All of us do. So yeah, he was disappointed too. Bansir further went on and added that we live in the richest city of the world. Travelers that come to the city say that none equals it in wealth. And yet, look how we are. We are no more than dumb sheep, right? Not able to take action. We've been working so hard our entire lives, and yet we have to be happy with so less. We have to be content with so less. Bansir further on adds that even after more than half of a lifetime of hard work, look where we stand today. Right? And when you actually come to borrow money, to borrow these 2 shakils from me to, what do I say? Do I give them to you? No. I just admit that my purse is as empty as yours. That's sad. Why is it that we cannot ever, have more gold than what we need for our robes and for food? Why is it? Why is it that we cannot afford more? Like, think of our sons also. Consider our sons. Are they following in their father's footsteps? Because I wouldn't want them to. Will they and their families too, will have to live in such a splendid place, splendid place like Babylon, with the world's most richest among them, and yet we'll have to, be happy dining with sour goat's milk and porridge. Think of it. Let us all feel this. I hope you guys are visualizing it. And when you're getting it, let's see what Kobbi says now. Kobbi goes on and says that it's so many years of our friendship. In all these years that we've been friends, never have I ever seen you talk like this, my friend Bansir. Never. This Bansir replies that never in years had I realized this darkness. Never did this fact dawn on me that we were so helpless financially. Why can't we be financially free? We yearn for that freedom. We yearn for that liberty. We all want to, own lands, to have cattle, to have fine robes and coins in our purses. And I am willing to work for all these things. With all my hands and all the labor that I can, and with all that I have in my mind, all the cleverness, all the cunning. Why? Why, my friend? Why can't I be rewarded? What is the matter with this? Why does it happen to us? This Kobbi answers. Would I be here? Would I be in the same place as you if I knew the answer? Obviously no. My earnings from the lyre are quickly gone. Sometimes I have to plan in advance so that my family and I don't go hungry. Think of that. Also within my chest, is a deep longing for a lyre that is large enough so I can create music. Music that people yearn to hear. Music that people will feel is bringing them to heaven. Music that even God, even the king has never heard of before. Such a lyre you should have, says Bansir. No man in all Babylon could make it sing more beautifully than you could. Now, as they're talking, they see a large line of slaves walking. They're on the king's business. That is, they're having, back in those days, they didn't used to have water bottles or buckets. So they used goat skins for holding water. And they were taking these goat skin water bags to water the hanging gardens, right? So when they look at these slaves, they correlate and say that how are we better than these slaves, right? How are we any better? Because even when we're free, even when we call ourselves free, we're not able to do what we want. We don't have that kind of freedom. We don't have that kind of liberty. Then how can we call ourselves free, right? How? Once he says, that is the truth, Kobbi. Unpleasant as unpleasant as that may be, that is the truth. We have worked our entire lives getting nowhere. We need to understand how others acquire gold. How do they, create their wealth? Right? Now, when they think of getting help or learning the secrets of creating wealth, Kobbi says, this very day, just today, I saw our old friend Arkad going in his gleaming and luxurious chariot, waving at all of us. He is the richest man in Babylon. Bansir agrees and says, he is so rich that even the king seeks his golden help in treasury matters. Kobbi says, he is so rich that even, the most of the Babylon's wealth, he might have a huge part in holding that wealth. And he is actually what you would call the wealthiest man of the wealthy city in the world. Once he says that if I ever met him in darkness, my hands would go to his purse automatically. That's a dark thought, but yet that's how much money, how much rich, how much wealth Arkad actually has. Once he says that I am afraid that if I meet him in the dark, I might lay my hands on his purse. To this, Kobbi reapproves and says, no. What nonsense. Utter nonsense. A man's, uh, a man never holds his wealth in his purse. Because that way, it cannot be called wealth, right? Wealth always refills the purse again and again. So it might be empty once, but you can still refill it, right? That is not true wealth. True wealth is when you can actually refill your purse again and again, right? He has other sources of income. Once he says that if I'm not wrong, he has a son who went to the city of Nineveh and became the richest man there. Kobbi agrees and says there has to be something, some knowledge that Arkad has in the creation of wealth. To this point, he strongly agrees, and they plan on going to him this very day. He, as a young man, learnt with them, and he was their friend, right? He was their friend. Bansir was very thoughtful of his friends. Comes up with the idea that all of their friends, together, they all shall go to Arkad to seek his financial help, but not just his financial help, his wisdom, to seek his wisdom on the creation of wealth, right? To learn. Kobbi cheered up, and what's more is that he appreciates Bansir's thoughtfulness of his towards his friends, right? So this is the part where they go to Arkad, that is the richest man in Babylon. This is where the chapter ends. Now this is where the chapter ends. For more, you will have to follow up on the next video that I'll be uploading and see what the richest man in Babylon has to say on wealth creation, right? And let's see if he can help me and you both, right? Let's see that. Now, thank you very much for staying with me this long. Thank you very much for patiently sitting here and listening to all that I had to say. Again, a disclaimer that I am not, this is no form of an audiobook. I'm only here interpreting the book and explaining it to you like a summary, but a detailed one. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, and click the bell notification icon for click the bell icon for more notifications, for timely notifications when I upload my new videos, right? Later videos. One thing that I'd like to say is that anyone would like to come up and share anything that they might want to talk about, if might be something personal, they might want to share, come up with their problems. I have no problem in that, and yes, I'd like to be ears to all people my age. I like to make a difference, and if I can be any help, do let me know in the comment section or in my Instagram DMs. You know where to follow me, right? I'll also give a link down in the description below so you can follow me on Instagram. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.